In MIDIGrade, select Settings, Photo Page, and you've just enabled a hidden menu which controls DaVinci Resolve's photo editing tools. Now the menu that selects primary adjustments has become a toggle between it and Photo Page. Next and Previous Node buttons turn into Next and Previous Photo. Here you can see some of my street photography over the years. And if you hold down Shift, Next node hearts a photo and Previous node rejects it. These buttons assign stars from 0 to 5. This makes it easy to fly through large batches of photos. I've got a couple of unedited favorites here. Join me as I color them and stick around till the end of the video, since I've got plenty to show you. Let's do it. First, let's fix the horizon. As you can see, I can effortlessly control rotation, zoom, and position. I've taken this photo in Paris, and it's a lovely composition and fun moment between the two boys. Though I find the highlights on the jackets a bit harsh, hijacking my attention from their action. So while we edit this, we'll address that. The layout for the raw adjustments on this EN16 controller follow as closely as possible to the same pattern to the color grading one. There's only a couple of exceptions where I had to take creative freedom, like gamma controlling exposure, or pivot is for sharpness, but all of this is notated in the user manual. While processing these photos, we will apply final touches in the color page. And that's where the power of this setup really lies. You will notice we can fluently jump between this and the color page, which I'm finding so much fun. And with the tools that I know and love, it's easy to make these photos sing. So let's do that now. We're in hue versus hue curves. And let's adjust the tonalities of these jackets now. I also want to bring down their saturation, like this, and increase luminance. Add serial node, go to qualifier. By pressing the qualifier menu again, I toggle on highlight. Now I'm working towards grabbing the color of the water. I want to introduce a bit of color contrast that way. I just can't tell you enough how exciting it is for me to have this type of control over all aspects of my photos when it comes to editing them. I'm fluent in Lightroom and have used Photoshop for 2 decades, but there's just something about being able to look at high quality scopes and work with nodes where previously these were realistically accessible to me only when working with motion pictures. Most importantly, here I wish to demonstrate what you can do and inspire you to experiment and find your own preferred workflow when using MIDIGrade. Now with the selection, I'll rotate these hues counterclockwise. New node. I like the yellows in the little ship and the sticks, so I'll pump those up in saturation. Parallel node. Then red saturation, which will affect their skin. Parallel node. And their jackets are still a bit bright, so coming down with cyan luminance. There. Perhaps I went a bit too far with their skin. Let's find that node and decrease the mate change in saturation a bit. Done. The changes are pretty subtle in this one. I like keeping my street photos quite naturalistic, have plenty of color in nice balance with each other. Let's spice it up a bit. Instead of using the same setup, we'll do the next one using an X-Touch Mini. We'll go back to the photo page using the same menu toggle. And this photo, which I took in Norway, is stylistically quite different. I'll use the gamma knob for exposure. In the raw adjustments, there's no gamma, but there's already lift and gain. So I just put gamma as exposure instead. I'm using the push and pull method, and even going beyond legal limits here, just to expose the mountains as well as I can using broad paint strokes. I'll fine-tune the sky later, but the closer we can get to the final in these initial steps, the better quality our end result will be, and with the least amount of artifacts. Let's cool everything down using temperature. I like to make this photo almost monotone and really highlight the cold and isolated landscape using harsh contrast. So with that in mind, we've got a good base, and let's hop over to the color page now. Start with high soft clip, bringing highlights down. They will still stay over limits, which I'll address further later. New node. Next, I want to guide our eye more towards the mountainscape, and the best way to do that is by first making the sky pop less. So I'll make a gradient window to select the top half of our photo and increase the softness to make it nice and feathered. Now first, I'll decrease the low end using lift luminance to make the sky moodier. I'm using the Y lift so that I don't affect saturation. And then to make the sky less eye-catchy, we'll decrease color boost. And we'll remove perceived contrast by lowering mid-tone detail. Node off and on. Let's add outside node. This makes a reverse selection of what we just had, so we can now affect the lower half of the photo. I want to do the exact opposite here. Increase contrast to guide viewers' attention towards it. Add serial node. Let's begin work on a creative look. I'm going to try and make this look more stylistic with hue, pushing all blues towards green. Further decrease saturation on the overall image. Add mid-tone detail to make these beautiful shapes in the photo more defined. And I'll again see what I can do to the very highlights. By decreasing the lock highlights, I can safely overshoot the adjustment, and then by using high lock range, I will fine-tune the amount of pulling it's doing. There, perfect. I wish to continue working on this photo to make it as stunning as I can. So in a new node, I'll go to log again and just add a touch of warmth in the highlights by adding red and decreasing blue. It's subtle, but it adds up. Again, a new serial node. I create a circular window by selecting the window menu twice, and to see better what we're affecting, I toggled off both highlight and window outline. With this one, I'm going to select the middle of our image. I'll use all tools I can think of to maximize focus on the mountainscape without the photo feeling overcooked. For that, it helps to make this selection soft, so the borders of this node completely disappear. Toggle back on window outline and highlight. Now I'll increase gain. This time I don't mind decreasing saturation as well, though it is a small amount, it's still there. I'll also add more contrast. There's still room to do this without making it look too crunchy. Okay, maybe now a bit too much saturation, so coming down with color boost. And further pushing the perceived contrast with mid-tone detail. Add parallel node. I'm using a parallel node instead in case this vignette overlaps with any of the selection we did previously. This is so that we don't do any unnecessary pushing and pulling with the signal and risk introducing color banding. Since I want to apply vignette only to the very top and bottom and not to the left and right, I can use a linear window with this, which is stretched over the photo's borders. And then by adding soft to the top and bottom, I can create the effect I want. I'll add outside node to make my final selection. And now coming way down with gamma, making it really dramatic and beautiful. Let's keep this fun and experimental. I'll use a MIDI keyboard, effectively an electronic piano, for the next photo. Once it's plugged in and properly set up according to the MIDIGrade user manual, I'll select it from the input list and off we go. On a MIDI keyboard like this, the layout is fixed and the workflow is quite different. We're still able to access all the functions as before, but the difference is that navigation between menus and adjustments happens with repeated key presses, and changing values with holding a key down. Just like this MIDI keyboard, many come with a mix of keys, buttons, and knobs, and it's unlikely you would just use keys in a workflow, but for the sake of demonstration, let's stick to these keys only. To make adjustments faster, there's 10 times speed. Let's reset temperature and find a nice look on the cooler side. In this instance, since I've already memorized the keys, I don't actually have any labels on them, but I highly recommend you to print out or just write on pieces of stickers what each of them does, so it's easier to navigate through the dozens of different functions available. The main ones I'm using here are the first two white keys navigating between menus. Those are primary adjustments, wheels and bars, HDR-grade, curves, qualifier, window, and of course photo page, and user menu as well, which I'll get to later in this video. Then the next two are next and previous adjustment keys, and the next two white ones are increase and decrease adjustment value. But that's only 6 keys, and meanwhile all of these actually have a function linked to them. So you can even move up and down octaves like I'm doing here to access even more of them. Now we'll just add some final touches to this photo using curves. And I'll add an outside node for inverse selection. Make this a bit vignette-y, and I'll also go to primary adjustments, find saturation, and decrease that a healthy amount. Node off and on. And here's the grade off and on. Okay, this one is exciting to me, since we'll use controllers you definitely already have right now. Computer keyboard and mouse. I'll switch on this function, enable keyboard, from the settings menu. And you might already be thinking, hey, isn't the entire point of MIDIGrade to not use these peripherals? But to that I say you would be amazed how quick and effortless you can get with this. So this 4x4 layout follows the same logic that is mapped for Intech Studio Grid controllers, BU16 and EN16. Those are the ones we used in the first photo. It's as simple as selecting a menu first, pressing and holding a key to activate an adjustment, and moving the mouse. That's it. I'm only looking at the photo here, because there's no need for me to follow the cursor where it's located on the screen. And as you can see, I'm as fast, if not even faster than on a controller. Already, I'm almost done with the roided. In just a couple of seconds, I've done temperature, tint, exposure, highlights, shadows, lift, gain, contrast, and now color boost, which I'm adding plenty of so I can counter that with saturation. Here's sharpness, but let's reset that by pressing the key twice and scale the photo with zoom, use horizontal position, then vertical position, and finally rotation angle. Beautiful. So there's another thing I'd like to show you. It's possible to add great looking and stylized looks to your photo using Film Look Creator. The problem is, what now when we've got all of these sliders and no fast control like we just did with photo and color pages? Here's what you do. If you go to settings, adjust coordinates, here you can manage user menu, which is a powerful feature built into MIDIGrade. It's a set of customizable coordinates that you can access. By default, their coordinates are 0, 0, which is the top left corner of your screen, so I'm adjusting all user menu coordinates simultaneously to roughly reposition them. Once that's done, I'll go into them one by one. First I click adjust, and then with my keyboard keys, I position it where I want. And I can speed things up by holding down the shift key. I'm targeting the numbers instead of the sliders, as that will result in much more accurate control over the values. And it takes only a couple of minutes to do this, and then if you want, you can save your work for later, or even share it with others, since you can just export this as a file. By the way, user menu is not just for the keyboard, but works with any controller. And you're not limited to DaVinci Resolve either, so you can use any software with user menu. Okay, let's enable user menu. And after that, we can access it in the same way as we did with photo page. The primary adjustments menu has become a toggle between these three options. And here it opens the effects tab for us automatically. Now we can use these functions the same way we did before, quick and easy. I'll just change the core look to one I like, and I can get straight back to adjusting skin bias, making the skin tone less red. And now finally using fade to soften the contrast by opening the shadows. Okay, I consider this almost done. We will apply some final touches to the portrait, and while I do that, I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who has over the years provided helpful user feedback. It's thanks to you that MIDIGrade has come this far. It's hard to me to actually believe this year marks the 10th year, an entire decade since MIDIGrade's first release. And this is the year when it finally has reached a major goal of mine. I see MIDIGrade now as a platform, a playground or sandbox, where yes, you can take one of the natively supported controllers and just start using it, but you can also create a completely custom controller that suits specifically your needs. It actually stuns me how many different input types there are when it comes to MIDI controllers. Like you could even create a gyroscopic controller if you wanted to. I'm still having fun developing and using MIDIGrade, and I'm so excited to now offer something to the photographers too. Thanks for watching.